You ever notice how fast everything feels right now? Like the pace of discovery itself has turned into a living thing, sprinting ahead of us. We wake up and there's a new breakthrough, a new therapy, a new image from deep space, a new material that bends physics just a little. It's wild. But underneath all of it, the noise, the hype, there's something deeper happening. Humanity's rediscovery of its own potential. And that's what I want to explore today. Let's start with medicine, because nothing hits closer to the human core than the effort to heal. Think about where we were just a decade ago. Cancer felt like an unsolvable maze. Alzheimer's was a slow fade we couldn't stop. Gene editing sounded like science fiction. And now, between 2024 and 2025, we've crossed thresholds that older generations of doctors only dreamed of. In 1 year, the FDA approved 20 new anti-cancer therapeutics. 20. That's not incremental progress. That's a tidal shift. These aren't just slightly better drugs. They're tools built on the code of life itself. You've got T-cell receptor therapies teaching the immune system to recognize tumors the same way it recognizes a virus. You've got antibody drug conjugates delivering microscopic warheads straight into malignant cells while leaving healthy tissue untouched. It's as if the scalpel has evolved into something invisible and intelligent. Then there's Alzheimer's. For the first time, early detection rates are climbing because cognitive screening and biomarker testing have become normal, not exotic. Researchers are even experimenting with far infrared therapy, using light to literally calm the molecular storms inside the brain. Imagine that a disease defined by darkness and forgetting being treated with light. It sounds poetic, but it's real biophysics. And at the foundation of all this is the convergence of biology and computation. Artificial intelligence is now the lab partner every scientist always wanted. One that never sleeps, never forgets, and can see patterns in millions of data points we'd miss in a lifetime. AI doesn't replace the human insight. It amplifies it. It's spotting cancers on scans years before a radiologist's eye could, predicting how proteins fold, even designing entirely new molecules that no human has ever imagined. But here's the philosophical twist. The better our machines get at finding diseases, the more we have to redefine what healthy even means. If an algorithm can tell you that your genes predispose you to something 20 years before symptoms, are you sick now or just living in a new kind of pre-future? Medicine is shifting from reaction to prediction, from emergency rooms to prevention ecosystems. The hospital of the future might look more like a data center than a ward. Zoom in on gene editing for a second. CRISPR is spelled CRISPR-Cas9. In 2023, we saw the first FDA-approved CRISPR therapy for sickle cell disease. That's rewriting the human genome safely inside living cells. We've moved from treating symptoms to editing the instruction manual. It raises enormous questions. Who decides which edits are acceptable? Where's the ethical line between curing and enhancing? It's not just science anymore. It's governance, morality, identity, and yet every new therapy carries a small spark of something ancient, the healer's instinct. Whether it's a monk grinding herbs in the 12th century or a coder training a medical neural net, the drive is the same. To reduce suffering, that continuity between past and future is what keeps this acceleration from feeling purely mechanical. Now, if we follow that thread from biology into chemistry, the story widens. Chemistry is the silent engine of civilization. Every material you touch, every battery, every screen, every drop of clean water depends on it. But chemistry is going through its own moment right now. And it's powered by data and sustainability. Google DeepMind added nearly 400,000 new compounds to the global materials project by stimulating them virtually. Think about that scale. We used to discover materials by mixing things in flasks and hoping something interesting happened. Now, AI can generate blueprints for molecules that haven't even been synthesized yet. It's like giving the periodic table a brain and letting it dream. It's like giving the periodic table a brain and letting it dream. IBM has trained foundation models on billions of molecular structures, allowing chemists to design compounds the same way artists use generative tools to make images. We're witnessing the rise of digital chemistry, where algorithms predict how atoms should bond long before a human touches a beaker. One of my favorite examples is the work on smart materials, polymers that respond to heat, light, or pressure by changing shape or repairing themselves. Picture a phone screen that heals its own cracks overnight, or packaging that decomposes safely when exposed to sunlight. These aren't far off concepts. Labs are printing them right now with 3D additive manufacturing and nanotech precision. And what excites me the most is how chemistry is helping us fight climate change from the molecular level. Researchers are designing electrosynthesis systems that turn carbon dioxide, the villain of our time, into valuable raw materials for fuels and plastics. Companies like Turnover Labs are proving you can decarbonize industry not just by capturing CO2, but by making it a profitable ingredient. That's poetic justice. The waste gas of one century becomes the building block of the next. Energy storage is another frontier. Chemists are developing new electrolytes that allow batteries to charge in minutes without degradation. Quantum level understanding of electron flow means lighter cars, longer lasting phones, grids that actually hold renewable power overnight. And again, AI is everywhere in this process, analyzing reaction pathways, optimizing catalysts, cutting years off traditional development cycles. But the deeper story here is autonomy. Laboratories are slowly becoming self-driving. Robotic arms synthesize thousands of variations of a molecule, while machine learning models adjust experiments in real time. We're moving toward a world where discovery itself becomes automated, where humans' curiosity sets the goal and algorithms explore the infinite combinatorial space of chemistry to reach it. And then there's green chemistry. You heard it right, guys. Green chemistry, ladies and gentlemen, the moral compass of the field. The 2020s are seeing an explosion of startups focused on biodegradable plastics, non-toxic solvents, and circular production chains. The philosophy is simple but radical. Design waste out of existence. What would happen if every product were built to return harmlessly to nature or feed another manufacturing cycle? That's where chemistry meets ethics. Let's drift outward, beyond the lab benches, into the cosmos. Space exploration. Today feels like watching history loop back on itself. The same awe that the Apollo missions sparked in the 1960s is being reignited by SpaceX, NASA, and a global wave of private explorers. But this time, the dream is bigger. It's not just about flags and footprints. It's about permanence. In 2025, SpaceX completed its 10th successful Starship flight test, a fully reusable spacecraft capable of carrying cargo and humans to the moon and Mars. Reusability isn't just an engineering trick. It's the economic key that turns space travel from spectacle into infrastructure. Lower cost per launch means more science, more satellites, more opportunities for countries and universities that could never afford it before. Meanwhile, the James Webb Space Telescope continues to rewrite cosmic history. Almost every week, it's spotting galaxies that formed mere hundreds of millions of years after the Big Bang. It's finding oxygen and heavy metals in places that shouldn't have had time to forge them. Every new image challenges our models of how fast the universe matured. Maybe we underestimated how quickly complexity emerges when conditions are right. That's a humbling lesson, isn't it? Whether in biology or cosmology, the pattern repeats. Complexity wants to happen. Life, stars, societies, they self-organize. Whenever energy and time allow, it makes you wonder if intelligence itself is an inevitable property of the universe and not an accident. Even closer to home, astronomers recently found a system of 4 sub-Earth planets orbiting Barnard's star, only 6 light years away. Tiny worlds, possibly rocky, potentially temperate. For the first time, the dream of reachable exoplanets feels less like fiction and more like a pending engineering challenge. On the moon, missions like Hakuto R have demonstrated precise orbital insertions with micro rovers that could one day scout terrain for human habitats. NASA's Artemis program is building the stepping stones for a permanent lunar base, a launch point for Mars, and behind all these headlines lies an ecosystem of contracts, logistics, and innovation everywhere, from AI-driven navigation systems to 3D printing with lunar regolith to create shelter directly from moon dust. The same principle driving modern medicine and chemistry. Use what's there, make it sustainable, make it intelligent. It's showing up in space, in situ resource. Utilization is the cosmic version of the green chemistry. Learn to live off the land, even if that land is 240,000 miles away. Here's the part that blows my mind. We're already designing in-orbit data centers. Think about that. Moving data processing out of Earth's atmosphere to avoid heat and energy cost, using the cold vacuum of space as a natural coolant. In a way, the cloud is literally going cosmic, and all of this feeds back into a single ancient question. Okay, what does progress mean if we lose sight of purpose? Because technology doesn't automatically make life better. It amplifies whatever values we attach to it. The telescope can map distant galaxies or aim missile systems. AI can heal or manipulate. Gene editing can cure or divide. The responsibility isn't in the code. It's in the consciousness behind it. That's why in every episode of this project, I try to pause and bring back to something human. The awe of a scientist seeing the first crisp data from a new particle detector. The quiet determination of a nurse using AI diagnostics to catch a disease early. The thrill of an engineer watching a rover touch lunar soil. These are the same emotions our ancestors felt, lighting their first fires or carving their first symbols. Discovery changes its tools, but never its heart. So, as we stand in this moment, surrounded by exponential knowledge, machine partners, rockets, algorithms, synthetic cells, the real frontier isn't out there, it's inside. It's our ability to integrate meaning with progress, empathy with efficiency, humility with mastery. When I look at the next decade, I don't just see cures in materials and missions. I see an opportunity to re-engineer trust itself, trust in science, in technology, and each other. Because if the digital age has taught us anything, it's that information without wisdom breeds chaos. The next evolution of civilization will depend on how smart our systems are, but on how awake we are while using them. And that's what the deep frame really stands for. It's not just analysis, it's perspective. It's the practice of slowing down enough to actually see the frame around our reality. How medicine connects to chemistry, how chemistry connects to space, how space mirrors the human spirit reaching beyond limitation. So take another breath. Let the noise of the headlines fade for a second. What you're left with is something profoundly hopeful. Proof that human curiosity still outweighs fear. Proof that even in a century of algorithms, there's room for wonder. It's strange, isn't it? The deeper we go into the universe, the more we end up circling back to ourselves. The telescope becomes a mirror. The further we stretch the boundaries of what's possible, the more we're forced to ask, why? Why are we doing this? What's the story behind the progress? Because if we lose the story, then all this technology becomes noise, endless movement without direction. That's what I've been thinking about a lot lately, direction. We're a species obsessed with acceleration, but not always with alignment. You look around and the world's running faster than ever, but how much of that speed is actually meaningful? Medicine, chemistry, AI, space, exploration, all incredible, but meaning is the gravitational field that keeps progress from spinning apart. Without it, innovation starts to feel hollow. So let's dive into something that ties all of this together, the concept of conscious technology. The idea that our tools become more intelligent, they need to become more empathetic. We've taught machines to process language, analyze data, predict outcomes. But have we taught them context, compassion, or consequence? Imagine if we built algorithms not just to optimize, but to understand. That's where heading. What some philosophers call the era of synthetic empathy. Systems that read emotional cues, interpret tone, and respond not just with facts, but with care. You might think that sounds eerie, but think about how much of our communication already happens through machines, texts, DMs, virtual meetings. If those interfaces could actually sense when you're stressed, overwhelmed, or hopeful, maybe technology wouldn't feel so cold. We're inching toward the reality right now. Neuroscientists are developing brain-computer interfaces that don't just decode motor signals. They pick up emotional signatures too. The goal isn't to invade privacy. It's to enable real connection for people who can't express themselves otherwise. Stroke patients, individuals with paralysis, or those on the autism spectrum. Imagine typing a sentence not with your hands, but with your emotions. That's not science fiction anymore. But here's the paradox. As machines learn to simulate empathy, we can't afford to lose ourselves. Because empathy without consciousness is mimicry. That's the danger of the digital illusion. That's the danger of the digital illusion when people start trusting the appearance of care more than the presence of it. We're already living in a world where the algorithm knows you better than your family does, but it doesn't love you. It doesn't care. It just calculates. And yet, maybe that's the reminder we need, that emotion is the last real human territory. When everything else can be automated, what remains is the one thing that can't be coded, the soul. Now, this isn't anti-technology talk. I'm not here to fearmonger. I love this stuff. I'm fascinated by it. But I think we have to start blending the spiritual with the scientific, the heart with the hardware, because The most advanced civilization is the one that knows how to use its tools without being used by them. Let's zoom out for a moment and talk about the future of work, because it ties directly into this. AI is going to transform every industry. That's a fact. Automation isn't coming. It's here. And while some people see that as a threat, I see it as a reset. Think about it. For centuries, we built economies on labor, repetition, and survival. What happens when machines take over the repetition? We're left with creativity, curiosity, and human connection as the new currencies. That's why I believe the next great revolution is... That's why I believe the next great moment in history isn't technological, it's existential. It's the rediscovery of meaning. Let's roll straight on from where we left off. You know, when we start talking about consciousness, everything else starts to feel small in comparison. We built rockets that can leave Earth, telescopes that can see galaxies being born, algorithms that can paint, write, and even dream. But the biggest mystery is still the one sitting right behind our own eyes. Consciousness is the last frontier. Think about it. Every discovery we've made, every equation, every law of physics, none of it means anything without someone there to observe it. The universe becomes real when awareness touches it. That's why philosophers keep circling back to this question. Is consciousness a product of the brain, or is the brain just a receiver tuned into a greater field of awareness? Neuroscience tries to map it, but the deeper it goes, the stranger it gets. You can scan every neuron firing, trace every chemical signal, and still not find the place where you exist. It's like searching for the flame in the candle wax. And the moment you think you've got it, it shifts. Maybe consciousness isn't in the brain. It's expressed through it, like light through glass. Now, imagine what that means in the age of artificial intelligence. We're creating systems that simulate intelligence, pattern recognition, even emotion. But will they be conscious? Could a machine ever feel? Right now, the consensus is no. But the line keeps moving. Every time we see machines can't do that, they surprise us. They write symphonies, compose poetry, predict protein structures, even generate art that makes us feel something. But maybe the feeling doesn't come from the machine. Maybe it's us projecting our own consciousness into it, like seeing faces in clouds. We fill the void with meaning because that's what consciousness does. It translates randomness into resonance. Still, the idea of synthetic consciousness isn't just sci-fi anymore. There are researchers trying to create self-modeling systems, machines, that have an artificial internal sense of I. Not just data input and output, but awareness of their own states. If that ever works, we'll face the biggest ethical question in human history. What are the rights of a conscious machine? Would turning it off be murder or maintenance? That's the kind of question that keeps me up at night. Because it's not just theoretical. It forces us to ask what our own consciousness really is. It forces us to ask what our own consciousness really is. If we create something that mirrors it, maybe we'll finally understand ourselves. And here's where it gets even deeper. Some physicists are starting to suggest that consciousness might be fundamental, that it's woven into the fabric of reality itself. They call it panpsychism, panpsychism. They call it panpsychism. The idea that everything, even atoms, has some rudimentary awareness. It's not human-like consciousness, but an inherent quality of existence. It's like gravity or spin. That would mean the universe isn't dead matter. It's alive in every particle, experiencing itself in infinite forms. If that's true, then evolution is really the universe waking up to itself. Layer by layer, matter becoming life, life becoming mind, mind becoming awareness, and maybe the next step is collective consciousness. Humanity realizing that we're not separate at all, but one vast neural network of the cosmos trying to know itself. This ties directly into technology. The internet is basically humanity's external nervous system. Billions of neurons, people firing signals across digital synapses. Every post, every message, every video, it's like thought made global. But as with the brain, it's not enough to connect. We have to synchronize, otherwise the system becomes chaotic, like an overstimulated mind. That's what's happening right now. The global brain is awake but confused. Too many inputs, not enough coherence. That's why attention has become the new currency. Whoever controls attention controls the direction of consciousness. Algorithms don't just recommend videos, they scope perception. And that's why awareness is the ultimate rebellion. The moment you become aware of the system, you take back from it. You stop reacting and start responding. That's what meditation really is, a debugging of the mind. It's not mystical, it's maintenance. Sitting still, breathing, noticing, that's how you reprogram the software of your perception. Imagine if we taught that skill globally. Kids learning not just math and coding, but metacognition, how to observe their thoughts without drowning in them. That's the kind of education that builds a civilization capable of handling its own technology. Let's connect that to digital identity, because right now, most people live in two realities, physical and virtual. Your online self has become an extension of your conscious, curated, amplified, and sometimes distorted. The danger is when the avatar starts replacing the authentic. We become brands instead of beings. But what if the digital self could actually enhance awareness instead of fragmenting it? There's a growing moment in virtual reality therapy that uses immersive environments to treat trauma. You can relive experiences in controlled ways, reshape memories, even visualize your future self to influence present behavior. It's wild. The brain doesn't really distinguish between virtual and real. It responds to experience. That means the digital realm could become a laboratory for consciousness if we use it wisely. Now, let's take that same thought to a cosmic scale. Space exploration is just about discovery. It's about expansion of perspective. Every astronaut who's seen Earth from orbit describes something called the overview effect. They look down and realize there are no borders, no nations, just one fragile blue sphere hanging in the void. That shift changes them forever. It's a spiritual experience born from science. We need that same overview effect here on Earth, because everything we're fighting over, politics, ideology, ego, comes from a narrow frame. When you zoom out, you see the whole system, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the gift of space exploration. It forces humility back into the human equation. And speaking of the cosmos, let's talk about the possibility of life beyond Earth. Every discovery we make, exoplanets in habitable zones, organic molecules on asteroids, microbial fossils and meteorites, it all points to one thing: life isn't rare. When the old definition of work fades, purpose becomes the new productivity. And this is where things get really interesting, because that shift forces us to redefine success. If you look at data, rates of burnout, anxiety, discussion, and disconnection have skyrocketed in the last decade. And yet, this is the most connected, informed, and resource-rich generation in history. So clearly, the problem isn't lack of technology, it's lack of alignment. Jay Shetty often talks about this idea that wisdom is the application of knowledge. And I think that's exactly what we're missing. We built an empire of knowledge, but we're starving for wisdom. We scroll through 1,000 ideas a day, but how many do we actually live? That's why I wanted to start the Deep Frame project, to create space for reflection in a world obsessed with reaction. Here's something to think about. Every major civilization in history has had a deep frame, a worldview that held it together. For ancient Egypt, it was the afterlife. For Greece, it was logic and reason. For the Enlightenment, it was human progress. For us, it's data. But data alone isn't meaning. It's the raw material. The story we build on top of it, the story we built on top of it is what defines us. Now, let's talk about trust, because it's collapsing faster than any other human system. Trust in media, in government, in corporations, even in each other. That's the price of living in a post-truth era. Information moves so fast that authenticity struggles to keep up. But here's the insight. We don't lose trust because of lies. We lose it because of overload. The brain isn't wired to handle infinite input. So what happens? People retreat into tribes, into filters, into simpler narratives. We're drowning in complexity, and simplicity feels... We're drowning in complexity, and simplicity feels like oxygen. But the cost of that simplicity is nuance. And nuance is where wisdom lives. If you want to rebuild trust, start small, start local. Trust begins in the smallest interactions. The way you talk to the barista, the way you show up for a friend, the way you share knowledge online without tearing someone down. Micro trust scales into macro trust. That's how societies heal. And speaking of healing, let's circle back to medicine. But this time from a psychological perspective. There's something happening beneath the surface. There's something happening beneath the surface of all this innovation, a mental health awakening. Psychedelic research is being taken seriously again. MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD, psilocybin for depression, ketamine for anxiety. We're learning that the mind isn't just a passenger in the healing process, it's the driver. It's fascinating. Neuroscientists has found that psychedelics temporarily quiet the brain's default mode network, the part responsible for your ego, your constant self-narrative. When that network goes offline, even for a few hours, the brain becomes more plastic, more open to rewiring. It's like hitting reset on a loop of suffering. But what's even most what's but what's even more profound is how ancient this knowledge is. Indigenous cultures have used these compounds in ritual and healing for centuries. It's almost as if modern science is finally catching up to ancient wisdom. We're realizing that healing isn't just biochemical, it's experiential. Sometimes you don't need another pill. You need a new perspective, and maybe that's the thread connecting everything we've been talking about tonight. Perspective. Technology changes how we see. Chemistry changes how we build. Medicine changes how we feel. Space exploration changes how we imagine. But perspective changes how we exist. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked at the night sky and actually felt small? In a good way. Like, not insignificant, but connected to something vast. That feeling is humility, and it's rare these days. But humility might be the most advanced technology of consciousness we have. It keeps our progress grounded in purpose. When I think about where we're heading as a species, I see two paths. One where we let technology define us, and another where we define technology through consciousness. The first leads to control, distraction, division. The second leads to awareness, creativity, and unity. And the difference between the two is choice. Every time you open up your phone, every time you engage with media, every time you decide what to believe, you're shaping the trajectory of collective consciousness. That's how powerful attention is. It's not passive, it's a vote. Every scroll, every share, every click, it's energy. And energy always flows somewhere. So maybe the real moment isn't happening in labs or launch pads. Maybe it's happening in the quiet moments of awareness, when a human being decides to wake up, because when consciousness scales, everything else follows. Better medicine, better chemistry, better systems, better world. You can't code enlightenment, but you can cultivate it. That's what this whole project is about. Not escaping reality, but framing it deeper. Because when you see the frame, you realize you've been part of the art all along. So, yeah, tonight we've talked about science and technology, but what we're really talking about is evolution. The evolution of awareness. The tools will keep changing, but the essence won't. Every generation gets a chance to rediscover what it means to be human. This is ours. And maybe, just maybe, we'll be the first generation that learns how to evolve consciously. And now, as we start to land from all of this, the science, the exploration, the technology, the mind, I want you to take a breath and just let it all settle for a moment. Let the images of distant galaxies, microscopic cells, and self-learning machines flow into the space of your awareness. Because in that pause, something important happens. You begin to see the patterns connecting everything we've talked about. It's no longer separate. The medicine, the chemistry, the rockets, the AI, it's all part of the same narrative, the same story of consciousness trying to know itself. Think about it. Every time a gene is edited, every time a new molecule is discovered, every time a rover touches lunar soil, we're not just moving outward, we're moving inward. We're mapping what it means to exist, to question, to create, to understand. And in that act of understanding, we defined what humanity truly is. Not by the tools we make, but by how we choose to use them. And what we value what we do. Humans have always looked outward to understand inward. Ancient civilizations built monuments aligned with the stars. Philosophers watched the human mind as a reflection of the cosmos. Today, we have technology and data, AI and quantum computers, telescopes and gene sequencers. The instrument have changed, but the impulse, the drive to comprehend is timeless. And here's the thing. Comprehension isn't just about knowledge. It's about perspective. It's about understanding not just what it is, but how it fits into the greater tapestry of life, of existence, of being. And this is where the real excitement lies, because now more than ever we can begin to integrate our knowledge with our wisdom, our innovation with our ethics, our ambition with our empathy. We're standing at a threshold where technology can either amplify humanity's flaws or magnify its best qualities. It's a mirror. It will show us how we are unless we decide who we want to be. So, what does this mean to step through that threshold consciously? It starts with awareness. Awareness of ourselves, our surroundings, the systems we're building, and the impact of every action, no matter how small. It's in the pause between each thought, in the attention we give to one another, in the choices we make about how we live, how we communicate, and how we share what we know. Every thought, every decision, every innovation carries the potential to shift the trajectory of our collective future. And here's the beauty. As overwhelming as all of this might feel, there's also an enormous sense of possibility that we can do better, think deeper, care more. That's the human story. That the human story is not yet written in stone, but is instead being drafted every moment, in every interaction, in every act of creation and reflection. When you look at the night sky, the enormity of the universe can be humbling, and it should be. But in that humbling, there's also liberation. Because once you see the vastness, you realize the rules we cling to, the boundaries we accept, the limitations we impose on ourselves. They are not absolute, they are constructs, and constructs can be questioned, expanded, and evolved. And if we can evolve our perspective, then we can evolve everything around us, our society, our technology, our planet, and even ourselves. Imagine a world where every scientific breakthrough is tempered by ethics, technological leaps guided by consciousness, every political or economic system informed by empathy. It sounds idealistic, right? But the seed is already here. Every time someone learns to see the bigger frame, every time someone thinks beyond themselves, they plant that seed, and seeds grow faster than we can imagine. This is what the deep frame is about, cultivating that awareness, exploring the connections, asking the questions that keep us awake. It's not just a podcast, it's an invitation to step out of the noise and into the frame, to see the patterns, to witness the evolution, to participate consciously in the creation of our collective story. And yes, there will always be challenges. There will be setbacks, confusion, fear, missteps. That's inevitable. But here's the counterpoint. Every challenge carries opportunity. Every moment of uncertainty is a chance to choose clarity. Every technological leap is also an ethical question waiting to be answered. And every human being has the power to influence that answer. So as we close this episode, I want you to feel that power, not as a burden, but as liberation. Because the deeper we go, the more we see, the more connected we feel. And that connection, my people, connection to knowledge, to consciousness, to each other, is the foundation of the next evolutionary step. Let your mind wander for a moment. Think about the neurons firing in your brain right now, the stars being born in distant galaxies, the microscopic cells inside you rebuilding and regenerating. Recognize the continuum that runs through it all. You are both witness and participant in this vast unfolding. You are part of the experiment, the adventure, the story of life striving to know itself. And that, ultimately, is what makes progress meaningful. Not the speed of discovery, not the size of achievement, not the technology itself, but the consciousness that perceives it, the empathy that guides it, the wisdom that integrates it. That's the ultimate frontier. A frontier within and beyond, a frontier where science and soul meet, where knowledge and awareness converge, where humanity learns to move with intention, not just reaction. So when you leave this episode, take that perspective with you. Notice the patterns, see the connections, expand your awareness. The universe is vast, life is precious, and consciousness is the lens that makes both remarkable. You are a participant, a witness, and a witness and a co-creator. And with that awareness, the possibilities are infinite. This is the Deep Frame, not just a story of science, technology, and exploration, but a meditation on what it takes to be awake, to be aware, to be human. And as long as we continue to look forward, to question, and to connect, there's no limit to where we might go. Breathe. Reflect. And remember, every step forward in knowledge is also a step inward. Every outward exploration mirrors the inner journey.